Yeah, so in today's session, we'll be discussing about cluster, how to create a cluster, what is a cluster actually, overview of the cluster, how many types of clusters are there, how to create a cluster, and along with that, what are the different modes which are present in a cluster. Cluster modes also. Okay, so these are few important interview questions. Please pay attention here. All right. So this was the workspace which we have created yesterday, right? ADB workspace. So just open that particular workspace, or else you can also go like this. You have your resource group. Just click on that resource group. What is our resource group name? December, this one. Minimize it. So if you see here, these all are the different kinds of services which we have created. What are they? One is data factory, one is databricks, which we have recently yesterday only we have created it, and this is blob storage, and the other one is data lake storage. If you see these types, right, you will understand easily, or else using these symbols also you can understand. Okay, so if you are not aware of where your service is, you can just go to your resource group and check everything. If you have used the same resource group, right, those will be present under your particular resource group. So these all are the different services which will be available for you. Okay, so just open this particular Azure Databricks Wala workspace, launch it. Just click on launch workspace. Okay, so this is our home page of our workspace, right? Yesterday we have discussed this is the home page. So in today's session, we will initially see what a cluster is. Okay, so even before that, what a cluster is, we will have to understand that, like in our particular Databricks, right? If you want to write any piece of code, okay, if you want to write any piece of code, we will write it inside our notebooks. Okay, we have something called as notebooks. Notebook is something like this text, this notepad is there, right? It will be something like this, but the thing is we will be having few features attached to that particular notebook. So inside that notebook only you will be able to write the coding part. Okay, we have our Databricks actually supports few different languages, 4 different languages it will support. So based on your feasibility, you can achieve, you can implement your code in any of the one language. Okay, so yeah, basically what, where do you have these notebooks? We have something called as workspace created, right? This is nothing but our workspace only. This is nothing but our workspace. We have created this, right? Workspace. So in this workspace, what all will be having? We'll be having notebooks, we'll be having libraries, dashboards. So these all are the different kinds of features which we are having inside our workspace. Okay, so in order to start with a notebook, right, initially the first thing which you will have to create after creating your Databricks workspace is a cluster. So basically, what is a cluster? Cluster is what? Cluster means it is a set of computational resources. Okay, so initially I'll tell you the definition of cluster and then cluster. So basically, what is a cluster? Cluster is nothing but it is group of virtual machines or nodes. Okay, so a group of virtual machines or nodes which will basically understand big data and used to execute it. Okay, so you can just understand like what is a cluster. The cluster means it is not a single node. Here in our cluster we will be having group of nodes. You can call it as node, or else you can also call it as a virtual machine. Okay, VM means virtual machine. Virtual machines, it is a group of virtual machines or nodes which understands big data and basically execute it. Okay, so this is what a cluster is. So let me give you the definition of what exactly a cluster is in our particular Databricks. Okay, so cluster means what? Cluster is nothing but it is a set of computational resources. Okay, set of computational resources. These virtual machines or nodes are available, right? So basically, based on your big data or based on whatever data you are giving, right, as an input, so on that particular data, it will perform this computations. Okay, it will perform different kinds of transformations, actions. We call it as computations. Okay, so virtual machines or nodes, or you also call it as resources. So these are nothing but set of computational resources where we run notebooks. So these are the things which we will do in our cluster actually. Okay, so what is a cluster? First, cluster is a group of virtual machines or nodes which basically understands big data. Big data means massive amounts of data, and basically we will execute that particular data. Okay, so you can also call a cluster as what? Set of computational resources where we can run our notebooks, jobs, etc. So notebook is what again? A notebook is a place wherein it is something like an IDE wherein we can write, implement our code and execute that particular code. Okay, not only running and implementing the particular code on this notebook, we also have what? We also have jobs. So jobs are nothing but, in our data factory we had triggers, right? Three different kinds of triggers. So here we can also execute a particular notebook based on a job. So here we call them as jobs. Okay, so this is the first step in your cluster. So what is a cluster again? Set of computational resources which are used basically to run your notebooks, jobs and everything. Okay, so this is what a cluster is all about. Okay, so now let me go to the portal and show you the cluster. So how to go to the cluster? If you see here, this cloud symbol, and along with that we have few nodes here, right? This is nothing but a cluster only. Let me just open that. Okay, so here you can simply create a cluster. Click on create cluster. So if you see here, you can just write any, you can just give any particular name here. Okay, so this is how once you click on the create cluster, this is what information will be displayed. Okay, so this is also important. Okay, so in order to write any code, you need to create this cluster first. Okay, so once you create a cluster and once you switch this cluster on, you can execute your notebook. Okay, whatever code you have written inside your notebook, if you want to execute it, initially the first step starts with creation of a cluster. So let me just give some name here. All right, so after that, this is just a name which you have specified, and after that, if you see here, we have different kinds of modes here. Okay, we have three different kinds of cluster modes. What are they? Standard, high concurrency and single node. Okay, each mode is having one specification. So based on your requirement, based on the workload, you will have to create appropriately. Okay, you can choose either of either from these three different options available. Okay, so initially, what is the high concurrency mode? High concurrency means what? So cluster modes, again this is important. First one is high concurrency. Okay, so what is this high concurrency actually? When do we make use of this high concurrency wala mode in a cluster? So imagine you are working in a project. Okay, you are working in a project. Obviously, you might be dealing with different kinds of people, right? Data scientists, data engineers, and data analysts. Everybody will be working in a single environment, right? They will be sharing our Databricks workspace and they'll be working. So in a project, you are not the only resource who will be working, right? Obviously, there will be multiple people who will be working in a single project. So in your project levels, right, we basically make use of this high concurrency wala mode. Okay, so multiple people working in a single project can make use of this particular high concurrency wala mode. Why is that so? Suppose multiple people are working in a single project. Okay, suppose multiple people are working in a single project, and if they are using the same notebook, okay, if they are using the same notebook, what will happen if this particular mode is not used, right? There might be chances of delay or latency will be there. Okay, so in order not to have that delay and latency, right, we have this high concurrency mode. Okay, here we do not have any delay or latency. All right. So basically in our projects, right, because multiple resources will be working in a single project, will be sharing a single environment, and this same cluster they might be choosing. Okay, so if they are using the same cluster, right, then there shouldn't be any delay or latency, right? Whoever is trying to execute it, there should not be any delay or latency should not be there. So that is why we have something called as high concurrency wala mode. Okay, so when in your POC kind of scenarios, right, you do not use this high concurrency wala mode, you can use the other two modes. Okay, this is for in the project level, right, we will be basically using this. All right, so after that, what else we have? We have standard is another mode which basically also we will be using, and the third one is single mode, single node. Okay, so basically what is a standard node? You can in your POC, for your POC purposes, you can just use a standard mode or single node wala mode. Okay, so if you are a new developer and if you want to make use of this standard mode for the first time, right, you can go with this standard node. Okay, you can just go with the standard mode. So for whatever mode you choose, right, so if you are choosing this particular mode, for this particular mode there will be few features available. For standard mode there will be little less features available. For coming to this single node, right, there will be even more less nodes will be less features will be available. Okay, so the best option without having any issue, if you want to use, this is single node. Only for POC purpose you can use the single node. It will not cause any issues for you. Okay, if you use this standard node also, sometimes it will say that quota has been exhausted bolke, it will throw some errors and you will not be able to start your cluster. So in that case, in that scenarios, since you will be dealing with small amount of data only, right, you go with this single node only. If you want to make use of this standard node also, it is fine. But if there is any error, right, if you feel that quota exhausted wala kuch issues aate hain, so then better go with this single node wala option. Okay. Okay, so single node wala option, when do we make use of it? It is best for POC related stuff. It is best. Okay, and remember one more thing, in our cluster, these are the three different cluster modes, and along with these, right, so I have told you, right, if you choose one particular mode, you will be having few features. Okay, so one of the feature is like we have something called as driver node and worker node. So basically, what is this driver node and what is this worker node? So if you choose any particular mode, so for this modes, right, there will be few driver nodes and worker nodes assigned. So worker node is what? Worker node is something which will actually does the work. Okay, and worker node is something which will actually perform the work. This node is actually responsible for performing the work. Okay, so this is responsible for performing the work. Coming to this driver node, what is this driver node? This does not do any work. This will manage the state information worker nodes. Okay, so basically your worker node is the one which will work hard. Okay, it will actually perform the work, whereas your driver node, what will it do? It will not perform any kind of work, but it will just manage the state information of worker nodes. Okay, it will only manage the state information of your worker nodes. All right, so whatever mode you choose, if you are choosing suppose if you are choosing the single node wala option, here what will happen, you will not have any particular, let me just show you here only. So now just observe this. Okay, so you have here DBUs are there, right? So DBUs means Databricks units. So based on this only you will be charged. Okay, we have a pricing tier. Okay, so based on the mode which you are using, based on that you are, based on the DBUs per usage per hour, right, you will be charged. Actually this is a service, right? Everything in a cloud is a service. If you want to make use of this Databricks wala service available, and in that if you want to choose a out of one from these three different nodes, right, you will be charged based on that particular node. Okay, let me just click on single node. So if you just click on the single node, what will happen? Just observe the difference here. Here you have 0 worker nodes and 1 driver node. Okay, you have 0 worker nodes. That means there are no worker nodes here, but only 1 driver node is available. And if you see here, since it is 0 worker nodes, you have no memory allotted and no codes are also available. Okay, so here we have we have only single driver node, and for that particular driver node you have some memory allotted, that is 14 GB wala memory is allotted, and we have 4 different codes. Okay, so you do not have to remember these numbers. Okay, when you click here, right, you will be able to see it. It's just that, you know, single mode, how many worker nodes are available, how many driver nodes are available, you just remember that, that will be sufficient. Okay, so in our single node we have 0 worker nodes and 1 driver node. Okay, just remember this thing. Coming to our standard wala mode, standard mode. If you see here, okay, one more thing, just observe this also. What was the dbus per hour cost? Here it is 0.75. Matlab per hour, per the Databricks units you have used per hour, you will be charged $0.75. You will be some, it will be, this currency will be in some dollars or euros or whatever. So based on that you will be charged. Okay, based on the, if you are working in a project, right, so based on the usage you are using these dbus, based on that you will be charged. Okay, so just remember this is 0.75. Just observe, you don't have to remember, but just observe the difference here. Here you have 1 driver node, memory is 14 GB memory and 4 cores. So now let me see the standard wala mode. So previously how many dbus per hour, what was the charge? It was 0.75. So here how much is the charge? Here it is 2.25 to 6.75. Okay, if you observe here, here the driver is one only. The driver is single, but the worker nodes are 2 to 8 worker nodes are available. Okay, so for each and every worker node there will be some memory allotted. So if there are 2 to 8 worker nodes, 28 GB to 112 GB wala memory has been allotted, and we have few different cores. Okay, so these are the cores which are actually available. You don't have to remember this, but just let me copy it. This is for standard. We have 2 to 8 worker nodes, and then this much GB of memory has been allotted, and this is the core size. Okay, this is again in the cluster. In the cluster we have nodes, right? So for that particular node, for each and every node there will be some memory allotted and some cores will be allotted. So that is this information. And what is the Databricks per hour? It is this much. Is the cursor. Mm. Okay, so here in the previous one, what was the limitation? 0.75. Okay, so you don't have to remember, just it's always better to have an idea. So that, for idea sake only, I'm just writing it here. All right. After that, what do you have here? You have standard mode wala option is done. In standard we have only 1 driver node, which is basically having some memory and codes allotted, and then we have something else called as a worker node, which is actually used to perform your work. Okay, whatever transformations or whatever actions you will be doing, basically using this worker nodes only you will be doing it. So here how many I have 2 to 8 worker nodes, and this much amount of memory has been allotted to each and every worker node. If you see here, I have 8 worker nodes. 2 worker nodes means 28. That means each worker node, if it is a single worker node, then 14 GB of memory is allotted, and 4 cores are allotted for a single worker node. Okay, if there are 2 worker nodes, then 14 into 28 GB memory, and 8 cores have been allotted to 2 nodes. Okay, it is a simple calculation only. After that, let me go to the high concurrency wala mode. So if you see here, the driver size has been increased. Okay, the driver size has been increased. Let me write it here. Driver size has been increased, and this is the worker size, worker node wala size. Okay, so in the standard mode, how much we have for a particular worker node? We had this much. Oh, I have not written the other one now. Okay. Okay, see here. So if you see here, let me write this also. If you see here, I have $6 to $18 per hour. If you use this, right, $6 to $18 will be spent for the service which you are using. Okay, under this particular high concurrency mode. So that is why we will not be using these in our daily basis. We will be using based on the workload. If your workload is high in a project, right, only then you will go with this high concurrency wala mode, or else you can also use this standard wala mode option. Okay, so here what all I have, the dbu per hour is 6 to 18, and here I have 2.25 to 6.75, which is minimum. If you see here, this is the least, so this is best for your POC purpose. Okay, so and here we have 0 worker nodes and 1 driver node. Here I have 1 driver node. In the standard also I have 1 driver node and 2 to 8 worker nodes. Here also I have 1 and 2 to 8 worker nodes, but then the difference is with the memory which is allotted. So here the memory allotted is 14 GB and 4 cores. If you see here, I have for one node only, I have 56 GB. Okay, so be it a driver node or a worker node, I have 56 GB of memory allotted and 8 cores. So if it is for one worker node, then it will be 56 GB and 8 cores. Okay, memory and cores, this is how it has been segregated. Okay, 2 means 8 into 2 16, 16 to 64. All right. So this is the brief, the detailed overview of our modes. What are the different modes are available, how many worker nodes we have, how many driver nodes we have, and what is the dbu per hour. Okay, and then let's go to the next topic. So this is the important question again, so that is why I've explained you clearly. And then after that we have something called as a Databricks runtime version. Okay, we have the Databricks runtime version. So whenever you are creating this cluster, right, it will ask for the runtime version. Okay, so if you just click here, right, so these all are the different kinds of versions which were available till now. Okay, so the current runtime version which we are using is this 10.2 wala version, which is recently launched. Okay, so previously we had 8.3, 8.49, these all we have. So we have different kinds of languages, I have told you, right, in that Scala is one language. Okay, Scala is one language and Spark is one language. Okay, so that particular language is also having versionings. So it started with 2.1. Let me just. Okay, so here we had 2.11, 2.12, and so on till the current version which we are using is 2.12. And then if you see this one, right, this is the Spark version, this is the Scala version. So Spark version is 2.4.5 and the recent one is 3.2. In the previous sessions when I was telling, it was 3.1.1. So if you see here, it was gradually increased till 3.2. Now the current version is 3.2. You can just choose any of the version which is available. You can use after this 3.1.1, right, you can use from here, which will give you the best performance. Okay, you can just make use of this particular option also, not an issue. You can just choose anything. That is your runtime version. Your runtime version will actually have something called as a Scala and Spark versions. So inside that Spark versions, based on the runtime version you are choosing, Scala will be having some version and Spark will be having some version. Okay, there will be few features inside that. So based on the features, right, we have been a particular software. If there are any versionings or updates only, a new version will be released, right? Along with the existing features, we will be having few more new features. So that is why we have these are the different kinds of features which are upgradations or versions which are available. You can just make use of anything. So I would say you can start from here. This 3.1.1 is there, right? You can just start from here. And then you have something called as autopilot options. So here you have something called as enable auto scaling. So when I was telling you about Databricks serverless architecture in yesterday's session, I have told you, right, like there will be something called as an auto scaling option. So based on the workload you have, if you are having huge amounts of workload, so based on the workload you will have to enable this particular auto scaling wala option. Okay, so once you enable this auto scaling wala option, what will happen? So using this enabling auto scaling option, right, you will have a feature increase or decrease. you will not do it. If you just on this, but if you just check box, if you just have this option checked, what will happen internally, it will have a feature to increase or decrease your worker nodes, worker based on workload. Okay, suppose you are dealing with big data. Okay, if you are having huge amounts of data, suppose be it like some MB, not MB, but 10 GB of data you are trying to perform. Okay, so this is a huge so if you choose this auto scaling value option, what will happen? Suppose by default, if you are choosing either standard node or else the high concurrency node, you have chosen 2 to 8 worker nodes. Basically, worker node is something which will actually do the work, right? So since this 2 GB 10 GB wala data is more, and if you want to improve the performance, right, to improve the performance, what it will do, it will try to allocate maximum number of worker nodes. Okay, once your cluster is on, it will try to allocate maximum number of worker nodes. That means for this scenario, it will allocate 8 different worker nodes. So what will happen? That means now I have not only one worker node, but I have 8 different worker nodes. So this 8 different worker nodes, the work will be shared. The workload is there, right? This workload, 10 GB workload, will be shared equally in between these worker nodes. Okay, so what will happen? So after the other, one after the other, it will not run. Okay, it will run in parallel. So one node will run in parallel to the another. That means all the 8 nodes will work in parallel. So using this auto scaling option, we can improve the performance for a Databricks notebook. Okay, so how to improve a performance? By using this auto scaling wala option. So based on the workload, what will happen? We will be having different kinds of worker nodes. So all these worker, since now I'm having so much GB of data. So if I want to transform this so much GB of data from one location to another location, what I'll have to do? I'll have to just enable this auto scaling wala option. So once I enable this, this cluster will actually allot the resources. Resources nothing but here worker nodes again, because this is the one which will actually perform the workload, right? So it will actually assign the highest number of worker nodes available to improve the performance. Okay, it will allocate 8 different worker nodes. After that, what will happen? All the worker nodes, all the 8 nodes will run in parallel, and they will compute it and they will generate the result. Okay, so using this, it will actually improve the performance. Suppose if you're having some 10 MB of data only you're having. Okay, at that time your cluster node doesn't have to use all the 8 worker nodes. It will actually divide it, because if you use 8 different worker nodes, what will happen? You are exhausting, you are almost using this much amount of memory, because this is having some price is available, right, for a particular thing. So it will not use all that. It will optimize the performance, but then it will also see the workload. This is not much considered to this 10 GB. This MB is not a big one. Okay, so based on the resources availability, it will just allot 2 worker nodes or 3 worker nodes, or it is up to the cluster to decide. Okay, it will actually decide and just make use of 2 worker nodes or 3 worker nodes, anything based on its resource availability. Okay, so if it chooses 2 worker nodes or 3 worker nodes, those 3 also will be computing parallelly. Okay, those will also be processed parallelly. All right, understood? Any doubts here?
No, ma'am. For me.
Okay. Okay, after that, what do we have other than this auto scaling option? Okay, so it's just that you will have to just enable this auto scaling wala option. If you enable, just to see the difference, see here. If you do not enable, by default, whatever now. If you do not enable it, right, by default whatever number you will specify, right, by default for this particular cluster, if you are sending 10 GB of data or 1 MB of data, whatever, it will use all the different if you are using 5 different worker nodes, it will use all the 5 resources, which is not a good approach, right? Because if you are having huge amounts of data, that is fine, you can just specify some number here. What if you are getting some small amount of data all the time? You might not be expecting big data, right? So for that, the always the best option is to use this autopiloting wala enable auto scaling option. So here whatever number you give, right, so based on that, based on the load workload which you are getting, based on that it will automatically assign take the resources, and then it will compute it and do it. Okay. So here we have something else called as terminate after these many minutes of inactivity. That means what? If you are not using this Databricks cluster, and if you are using, if you are Googling it, or if you went outside and if you're Googling something else, if you're not in this particular tab, right, at that point of time, your Databricks units will obviously be spent, right? You will be having for any particular service. If you are not using it, then you don't have to pay for it, right? If you're not using it, is similar to a data flow debugger. If that data flow debugger is on for 1 hour, if you are not using also, internally you will be having your resource which is associated to that particular data flow transformations. So whenever you just come to that within that 1 hour time period, whenever you just execute it, it will be executed. Why is that? Because to execute it we need nodes available in our system. So whenever we have something else called as nodes available in our system, it is always better to minimize the time here, idle time. If you just leave it like that, obviously that also will cost you. So it is better to make it short. So since it is for POC purpose, I'm just putting it after 20 minutes. So that means this particular cluster will be running and resources will be available only till 20 minutes of inactivity. After 20th minute, what will happen? This cluster will get terminated automatically. Terminated means what? It will just stop automatically. Okay. As we do it for our data flow debugger, after 1 hour, we do not have few minutes of option there. We only have 1 hour, 2 hours, or 3 hours. So after 1 hour of inactivity, the data flow debugger will say that session has been timed out, and it will stop automatically. So here also, since this is also a cluster and that is also a cluster, right? So after 20 minutes of inactivity, this will automatically get terminated. Okay. So based on your requirement, you can just choose whatever worker nodes, minimum worker nodes, maximum worker nodes, you can choose it. Okay, here this is something like a driver type. You can choose whatever you want, you can choose it. So if you're based on your requirement, right, you can just choose this option here. So usually we will be using same as worker nodes. So however, how much ever worker nodes is having the memory codes and everything, right? Similarly, the driver type also we will be using the same. Okay. So if you just scroll up and see here, what for this particular worker nodes, I'm having 6 to 8 wala DBUs, right, per hour. So similarly, I'm also using the same here. So here also it will be like 6 to 8 Databricks units per hour. Okay. And then you can just click on create cluster. So once you try to create this cluster, if there are any errors in the cluster, right, if there are any errors in the cluster, this will not get switched on. What happened? Oh, I have used high concurrency wala mode. Okay, I'm not supposed to use that mode. So let us see what is the error it is showing. Okay, I've told you, right? It will show you some quota exhausted, exceeded wala exception bol ke. See here, Azure quota exceeded exception error code. Operation could not be completed as it results in exceeding approved total regional codes quota. Okay, since this is a free trial version, right, we will be having only few cores, few memory only will be present. So based on that, you will have to choose it. Okay. If you see here, whenever we were trying to create the cluster, whenever we have created this particular Databricks workspace, what was the location we have chosen? By default, we have chosen East US. So for that particular East US wala region, the current limit is 4. Current usage is 0, but we have chosen what? We have chosen high concurrency wala node, which is having more worker nodes, more driver nodes, more core, and so much memory. So that is why it is showing this particular exception. So what you can do is you can just delete this. Okay, I will just delete it from this list after it has terminated and its configuration has been noted. Okay. Okay, now let me quickly create a new cluster on a single node. Okay, because that one we will be using this Jan. Here I will use single node wala cluster. In this Databricks runtime version, it could be anything. Let me just choose anything here. Here I will change the time. I do not want to wait my cluster to wait for that much time of inactivity. I'll just give 20 minutes. Okay, and these you're already aware of. So let me just quickly go and create it. Okay, if you use a single node, right, you will not face any issues. You will be able to start this cluster, stop this cluster whenever you want. Okay, so once this cluster gets switched on, right, once it gets started, it will be in green. Okay, you can restart this particular cluster if there are any connection related issues. You can terminate this cluster once you are done working with that particular cluster. If you want to delete it, you can delete it, and if you want to edit also, you can edit it. But remember one thing, you can only edit other options but not the single mode wala option, because this will be grayed out. All right, so at the time of creation only you can just edit this. Whenever you're trying to create it only you can change it. That is why some time back I have mistakenly chosen the high concurrency wala mode, and then because of that I couldn't edit it, right? That is why I have deleted it and I'm trying to create a new one. Okay, so mean it will take couple of minutes to get switched on, similar to our data flow debugger. So meanwhile let me create a new notebook. So how to create a new notebook? Go to here, create tab, click on notebook. And then just give and here if you see we have different kinds of languages. We have Python, Scala, SQL and R. These are the four different languages which are available inside our particular notebooks, Databricks notebook. So by default I will be choosing this Python language. Okay, and this is the cluster to which I should attach it. Okay, so there is another workspace also available. If you if you just go back here, if you see here we have two different workspaces created, right? So this was created by someone else, and this recently, like yesterday only, I have created. Okay, so for a particular workspace this person has also created one cluster. So that is why if you just click on here, right, you are able to see two different clusters available. So you can just choose your cluster, not an issue, or that cluster, any cluster. You can share your clusters within workspace also. You can just choose any of the cluster. Let me just click on create. So 1 minute, if you see here, your cluster is switched on. How can you say if it is switched on? You can see the green dot here, right? Green circle. That is nothing but if you just hover on it, it will tell you that cluster is running. So how to stop your cluster? You will have to come back here and then click on this terminate wala option. Okay, remember one thing, if you are using if you are not using this cluster, if you are done, okay, after this particular session, right, I will have to go to this compute wala option, come here and then stop this cluster. Or else what will happen internally, since the time limit which I have given is 20 minutes, right, if I use it or not use it also, for 20 minutes it will be keep on running and it will eat away the credits. So the best approach is to, once you're done with your POC kind of stuff, just go back to this cluster and then terminate it. Okay, similarly you should do it for the data flow debugger also. Actually data flow debugger, right, compared to your this particular cluster, your data flow debugger will not eat those many credits as far as I have observed, but this particular cluster will eat away your credits, so just be very careful. Similarly, in Synapse also we have one concept which is called as dedicated SQL pool. Okay, so here we have cluster, there we have pools. Dedicated SQL pool is one of the dangerous options which is available in our Synapse. So if you just start that particular pool, right, if you just start that particular cluster and if you just leave it, if you use it or not, all the free credits will be expired. So in the previous or in the before session, right, in the before training wala session, there was one person who mistakenly created that dedicated SQL pool and he forgot to switch it off. So actually he just created that particular account only like 3-4 days back. Since he had done that mistake and he didn't stop it, he didn't pause it, right, what happened, from 14,000 the credits were reduced by 7,000. And on the very I have stopped it, somehow something else was happened and someone else might be able to mistakenly started it or wantedly started it. Again, from 7,000, the credits were exhausted to 3,000. So that's the reason why that particular account got wasted. Okay, so I will explain you when I am telling that dedicated SQL pool also. So here also you should be careful if you're using your account or anyone's account. Just be very careful. If you're not using it, best approach is to come and stop it here. Okay. Okay, now let me go to the notebook. So I have just created a notebook, right? So where can you see that particular notebook? Inside this workspace, you have something called as commands. So this is the one which I have just created, right? Double click on that, and this is your notebook. So now this is your notebook, and inside your notebook, you will be having different kinds of commands will be present. Okay, you can just click on this cell here. So whatever code you write it here, right? If you want to add a new cell, you can just click on this add option here. Okay, if you want to remove it, you can just remove it. So here is where you will be writing your code. Okay, so since this particular notebook is in Python language, and what all are the different kinds of languages which are available, I have told you we have 4 different languages. All right. So we have 4 different languages. So by default, I have chosen Python language. This is the default language which I have chosen while creating the notebook. All right. So if you want to change your particular language from Python language to Scala language, how can you do that? You will have to make use of percentile, and then whatever. If you want to make use of SQL, your language default language is Python. If you want to convert it to SQL, then how can you do it? You will just have to make use of this percentile SQL wala option. Similarly, percentile R, percentile Scala, like that. Okay. Is when you will be using this, we call it as magic commands. Okay, magic commands we will be calling. So whenever you want to change a notebook's language from one default language to another language at any point of time, you don't have to go to your notebook and change the default language here. You can just click on this particular percentile SQL wala language, and then you can just write it. Okay, so let me just write one thing for you. This actually is in Python language. So if you want to change the language, let me just show you. Select star from some table name. If you see here, this select is there, right? This select, it is not understanding if it is a word or what. So since we are aware that this is a SQL wala query we are aware of. So how to make your notebook understand that is an SQL? We will have to give percentile SQL. So if you see here, what did it do? I have just given this percentile SQL. This is the magic command. So using this, what happens? Previously, it was in my Python language. So using my SQL, I have just written a query. I have converted from Python language to SQL query. SQL language. So how did I do that? But just by using this magic command, which is percentile SQL. So previously, if I didn't give that, it couldn't understand the select wala keyword. Okay, because select keyword is not only present in your SQL, it is present in your Scala, PySpark, and every language it is present. So in order for your notebook to understand, you will have to explicitly specify it by giving percentile SQL, percentile R, percentile Scala, like that. Okay. So here it understood. Now it will be able to read it and perform the different kinds of transformations, like reading, writing, inserting, deleting, whatever SQL queries you want to write, right? You can just write it. So this is one of the default notebooks which we have created, which is in the format of Python language. So let me just tell you one command, which is percentile fs. What happened? Somehow I'm not able to run this particular notebook. So if you want to run your notebook, right, you can just press on shift enter, or else you You can just go here and then click run cell. Available, you can just make use of any of the particular option. Okay, I don't know why, but I'm not able to execute this one. Is there Okay, so let me quickly do one thing. I will just import one file. Okay, so I have told you, right, like we have something called as Databricks file system. We can just import any particular file. So let me go to my Azure data files, CSV file, and then trip where pivot data. Let me just add all the files, not an issue. If you see here, where will it be stored? It will be stored in this file has been uploaded to this particular location. Okay. Hey. Okay, so this is our Databricks file system. What is this Databricks file system? So if you want to internally, this is internal to your particular notebook only. In your Databricks workspace only, it will be available. So if you want to read a file from your, if you want to import it and if you want to read it inside your notebook, you can just use this particular path. Okay, so since I have uploaded it, let me just make use of let me go to the notebook again. How can I go to the notebook? Just click on workspace and then go to your particular notebook. Percentile कहाँ पर है? Percentile FSLS.
What is this percentile FS and LS?
Yeah, so percentile FSLS is something like it is a file system. So basically this is FS. Actually I could have showed you that if this was working. I don't know why it is not getting executed. Today is 18th. This is having still credits, but I don't know why it is not getting executed. So here, right, this is nothing but one of the command to list the files which are present inside your directory. So I have just uploaded few files which are present, which are uploaded onto this particular location, file store slash tables. So this is the path. So using this percentile FSLS, FS is file system, LS is listing. So we have different kinds of dbutil commands which are available. Okay, if I just run this now, it should actually run it and display me so many commands, but actually I don't know why it is not getting displayed. So that is what I'm checking. dbutils.help. This is one of the dbutils command, and after that we have dbutils.fs.ls, and then whatever path we will give. So don't know why it is not getting. dbutils.help. Correct, teacher. Utils.help. FSLS. At least this should list me all. If I don't give this path also now, if I just execute it, it should actually give me the result. But I don't know why it is not happening. Okay, I will see this why it is not getting executed in tomorrow's session. So today's session you have understood, right? Let me just terminate it. Did you understand today?